Hey there, so I've been asked quite a few times how I made my awning for my Trillium trailer. So I thought I'd try to put a few videos together to show you how I did it. The first one that I made for Jelly Bean was actually just made using two shower curtains, which I sewed together and then added the top piece to slide into the original railing. That's great if you're not an avid sewer, I would say go that route for sure, but if you're looking at something a bit more challenging with an amazing outcome, I would say try to do this. So this awning is made for a Trillium 4500. It's 9 feet long and 8 feet deep. It is made with using Sunbrella material, which is awesome fabric. It is fade resistant and waterproof, and you can wash it. Now, because it's 9 feet long, you have to have a seam in the middle. The way I did my seam is I first sewed it once right there, and then I folded this piece over and sewed it again there. The reason for that is not only to make it look nice on the underside, but also so that the top side, it's harder for water to get through if you have that double stitch. If you just had it single, it would drip through, and it also would not look very good on the underside. And you have to remember when you're sewing an awning, the underside is just as important, if not more important than the top side, because you see that most when you're sitting under it, which doesn't make it the easiest to sew, but it's fun to do. So yeah, so if you had the double stitch, you prevent water from coming in. And then I also, just to be extra cautious, I do spray the seam using that spray that you use on tents to prevent leakage. I will probably do that once a season. So when I finished sewing the two pieces together, I then started making my scalloped edge piece, which is a separate piece altogether. I made that on its own. I don't remember exactly how long this is, but I'd say it's about 7-8 inches high. You don't have to necessarily do this exact style. It's kind of neat to see them scooped as well, which might be a bit easier to sew than these silly corners I realized afterwards halfway through doing it. I actually found this at an auction. I'm an avid auction and antique hunter, and I love it. This is actually vintage. It's from the 1970s. I'm not sure if you could still get that, but it just worked out so well, and I had it in my sewing closet, so I was pretty excited to find a spot to actually use it because I think I've had it for about 15 years. So I first sewed, once again, you have to make sure your underseams are just as nice as the top because it will be seen. I cut along here and then I cut a little slit. I sewed it in, not this way because this way you'd see the seam. I sewed it into the other side. So it was hidden under here. And then I sewed this on. It's not the easiest to do. The corners were really a pain to do. So I would suggest doing the edges that actually just scallop like this around it because it's easier to bend than try to sew these corners. I then added these grommets. I added 3 of them. This is the center one, and then there was one on either side. These are to put the awning poles into. Because there's a lot of pressure on that fabric, you can't just leave it just on this fabric. So I made a triple thick piece that I just added on, and I sewed it onto this before I added the extra flap on the top, and then I put the grommet on so that there's 3 pieces here, and then this piece is extra thick. Hopefully it won't ever rip, because my first awning I did the mistake of not doing that and it ripped, and I just had to go back and do it again. So that was before I put this piece on. I sewed this onto the actual awning itself. And now the difficult part of trying to explain how I sewed this piece, which is the extra skirt around the whole back, underneath side, I did it around the front and the sides, onto the actual awning. That took a lot of figuring out how to sew this on so this would hang properly and not just flap down over, and so that it was also a bit waterproof and it looked nice from the underside as well as the top. So what I first did was I did this stitch here. So I sewed this piece to this piece normally, and then it was not easy to do. I know, I can't even figure out how I did this. Okay, and then I think what I did was I took the rough edge and I folded it up inside and then sewed this stitch here so that this awning, when it's up, it'll hang straight down instead of flapping over. I hope that makes sense because that was not easy to try to figure out. It took a lot of Yeah, so if you're not getting it, please just message me and I'll try to do another video and explain it, but I'm not sure how else to explain that part, sorry. And now for the corners. So here is the corner. Instead of just wrapping the fabric around, I made a piece for each section. You don't necessarily have to do that, I realized afterwards. You could make one giant long one. The only thing is you will have a seam somewhere, or you'll be wasting a lot of fabric because you have to do the whole length of the fabric. So I did 9 feet, I did 9 foot section into 6 feet, and then I sewed it together in the corner. And so it would hang nicely. I sewed the corner stitch like that, and then this under, and I did the same thing. I hid my fabric underneath, and then this is the, I'll try to show you if I can get to it, sorry. And that's the corner grommet as well. And then I sewed that together. So it hangs really nicely when it's actually up. The awning hangs straight down on either sides, which is kind of nice instead of just scooping over. It just looks much better. And now for the rope that goes into the awning. So if you have an awning rail already on your trailer, that's awesome. If not, you can thankfully still purchase them, because I find this system is actually one of the easiest methods. It's so primitive, but so easy. Don't use this rope, get a white one. I'm getting a white one. This just looks ugly and it's hard to hide. But basically you just make a pocket, and then this rope slides down into the awning rail, and then this slides with it. It has to be the right gauge rope, and I forget what it is. Sorry, I wish I could help you there. But yeah, super easy to slide on. It takes me not even 10 minutes to put the awning up, and I could do it myself, and the end result I like, and it still brings that vintage look, but yet something new.